Tonight, on a special 2-hour edition of Mr. Media Radio, I'll be joined by some of Blog Talk Radio's most popular hosts as we remember the late singer Michael Jackson on this, the first anniversary of his unexpected passing. Stick around. This is Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview. You know, MrMedia.com, MRmedia.com. Stop by and check it out sometime. There are more than 500 archived celebrity interviews for your listening pleasure. The show is brought to you today by thepartyauthority.us. Planning a wedding, mitzvah, or corporate event? For any and all occasions, call the Party Authority nationwide at 1-800-DIAL-DJs. That's 1-800-342-5357, where one call does it all. So where was I before the commercial? Oh yeah, Mr. Media is recorded live from the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. A year ago today, on June 25th, 2009, millions of people were stunned to discover that singer, songwriter, and pop culture legend Michael Jackson had died suddenly and mysteriously at home in Los Angeles. His passing was met with general sadness and, yes, a little contempt from people who felt that Jackson's questionable private life took away from the wonders of his professional accomplishments. Tonight, we've gathered an all-star cast of Blog Talk Radio hosts from coast to coast to talk about Michael Jackson's life and career, the good, the bad, and a little of the ugly. Joining me over the next 120 minutes will be, in order of appearance, Janice Malone, host of Film Festival Radio in Nashville, Tennessee; Tony Peters, host of Icon Fetch in Dayton, Ohio; D.A. Williams, host of WDKK Radio, also based in Dayton; and Mother Knows, host of The Mother Knows Show, which comes to us from Philadelphia. During the course of the show, we'll also be playing audio clips from many Blog Talk Radio shows this past year in which hosts have interviewed men and women who knew Michael Jackson, including one with his father, Joe Jackson, as well as a conversation with actress and singer Stephanie Mills, best known for starring in The Wiz on Broadway. We also have original comments about Jackson from singer Tommy James of Tommy James and the Shondells and several 60s-era Motown execs and talent. Along the way, you'll also hear clips from some of Michael Jackson's best-selling songs, and a few celebrities will be talking about the late performer. We also want to hear your thoughts on a year without Michael Jackson. You can call into our studio line, 1-646-595-3135, and join the conversation here, or participate with fellow fans in the live chat accompanying this program on Blog Talk Radio. This week also brought publication of a new book, Thriller, The Musical Life of Michael Jackson, written by pop music authority Nelson George and published by Da Capo Press. I'd like to take a moment at the top of the show and read you the introduction from George's book, which you can order online if you like at MrMedia.com. This is by Nelson George. It is 1971. I'm 14 years old and I'm lacing up my black platform shoes. My mother is putting on her lipstick and my sister, 3 years younger than I, and a Jackson 5 fanatic, is picking out her afro. As I wait on the ladies in my life, I sit on my bed in the public housing bedroom I share with my sister, flipping through copies of Right On magazine, which, in the years before BET's 106 in Park, is the way young black kids kept up with their teen idols. I read about a pickup basketball game at the Jackson family's Encino home and wonder if I could take Jermaine off the dribble. My sister and mother are now ready. We grab our coats and then knock on our neighbor's door. Betty and her son exit their apartment, and we all ride down the elevator from the 6th floor. We live in the Samuel J. Tilden housing projects in Brownsville, Brooklyn, an area that is one of the worst ghettos in America. We walk down Livonia Avenue with the 16-story Tilden buildings to our right and the elevated IRT subway tracks looming to our left. Before we go upstairs to the elevated train, my mother buys Wrigley's Spearmint Gum at the local candy store on Rockaway Avenue as we all keep an eye out for the junkies who hang menacingly on the corner. The long ride takes my family and friends from Brownsville, near the end of the IRT line, across Brooklyn, through Crown Heights, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Park Slope, downtown Brooklyn, and then into Manhattan, running under Wall Street, through Greenwich Village, up to the Garment District, and finally to West 34th Street. On that long ride, we talk about previous trips to Manhattan. My mother, who's studying to become a teacher, has taken us to many events in the city, from Mary Poppins at Radio City Music Hall to Ossie Davis's Pearly Victorious with Melba Moore on Broadway. But this family This family outing will be one of the most memorable of our lives. We get off at 34th Street and 7th Avenue, joining the throngs of black and white families filing into Madison Square Garden. This version of the world's greatest arena is only about 4 years old and has already been the site of the first Ali Frazier heavyweight championship fight and the New York Knicks' first NBA title. I've listened to so many games on the radio being played in this building, and yet it's only my second time inside. We sit up high in the green seats to the right of the stage, but we're too excited to be upset about our nosebleed location. My mother is happy because Chuck Jackson, a deep-voiced soul singer and longtime favorite, is one of the opening acts, obviously placed on the bill as an acknowledgement to all the parents in the house. I don't realize until a few years later that the Commodores with Lionel Richie were the other opener. They performed a brief set. When the Jackson 5 takes the stage, the piercing screams of teenage girls fill the garden. Michael moves swiftly across the stage, a little dynamo who reminds me of Mighty Mouse, the hyperactive Saturday morning cartoon character I love. The Jackson boys, in their multicolored outfits, glide across the garden stage, and their afros, perfect ovals of jet black hair, look like halos. Though the crowd is very integrated, there's a palpable sense of pride emanating from the many black families in attendance. The Jackson brothers, as well as their parents, Joe and Catherine, represent our potential and dreams. If they could emerge from the working-class slum of Gary, Indiana, so might my family escape public housing in Brooklyn. The Jacksons represent a growing sense of possibility for my family and me. Maybe one day I could even write a book about Michael Jackson. In a world where a black family, led by an astoundingly talented little boy, could sell out an arena in New York City, anything could happen. And again, that is from Thriller, The Musical Life of Michael Jackson, a new book out just this week by Nelson George. Now, before I bring on our first guest, Janice Malone, host of Nashville-based Film Fest Radio, let's set the mood a little bit with a little bit more Michael Jackson music. I think you'll know what this is. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a special Mr. Media radio show remembering Michael Jackson on the first anniversary of his death. And joining us now in Nashville, Tennessee, is Janice Malone, host of Blog Talk Radio's Film Festival Radio. Her show covers film festivals, music festivals, and celebrities across several genres of pop culture and pulp culture. Malone has worked in radio in several cities and as a writer-reporter for both the National Enquirer and the Globe tabloids. Janice, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here, Bob.
Well, we're delighted to have you. You've done some very interesting work on Michael. We've got a couple interviews that we're going to play from you. You interviewed in recent months. You talked to Joe Jackson, Michael's father, and also CNN's Don Lemon, who was on the air earlier today with the Michael Jackson special.
Yes, I really enjoyed talking to Don earlier this week, and of course Joe Jackson. A lot of people heard earlier this month, and it was quite interesting. You know, I've had a chance to see the DVD of the documentary that aired earlier tonight on CNN. I got to see it over the weekend, and I'm still stunned by a lot of the revelations and a lot of the interesting information that they have revealed by it, as I'm sure most of the public has seen tonight.
Well, yeah. I want to play one of the clips. We have a couple of them from Don. This is Don Lemon talking about how he heard about Michael's passing. Listen up, folks.
You never thought Michael Jackson would age or get old, and then you look back through pictures and you go, oh my gosh, he was a little boy at one time. Yes. And to some people, like my mom, he's still that little boy, right? Yes. It's like her kid, you know. I'm always her son, and she looks at me and she goes, oh my gosh, you're a grown man. And to her, in her eyes, it's still, you know, I'm still that little kid that she, you know, would put over her knee and say, stop doing that, boy. But I think people think the same thing about Michael Jackson, even though we saw him in his different transformations and, you know, whenever he changed, because admittedly the plastic surgery and all of that. But, yeah, I think people see him in a certain way. And no, who would think that Michael Jackson would die? Every time I hear of a celebrity that I have this sort of ingrained in my psyche, I go, that person is gone. You know, Rue McClanahan is gone. Bea Arthur's gone. Oh, my gosh, she's still Maude to me, right? Yes. So and I think people, you know, he's still little Michael Jackson. And I say with the first interview I did, the first live shot I did for CNN when I got out to L.A., and the anchor saw all of the people behind me. He said, "Oh, my gosh, look at all the people behind you and all the interest in this." And I said, "Yeah, this is Michael Jackson. Not only is it Michael Jackson, it's the Jackson 5, the Jacksons, it's Janet, it's all of that." And I said, these kids, these songs, and I say kids now because he's really not a kid, it was a soundtrack to my youth. Starting with Ben, the two of us need look no more, and then on and on and on to I Want You Back. That was a soundtrack to my youth, and thousands and thousands, millions of other people, not only in America but throughout the world. It was a soundtrack to their youth.
Absolutely. Where were you when you first got the word that he was gone?
Okay, it's a weird story. I was in Chicago. And I got into Chicago because we were working on this project, Black in America, which I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
And it was our second installment of Black in America. It was Black in America 2. We were following up. And so I was in Chicago to talk to people and show a screener of the second documentary. And Soledad was in New Orleans, and Soledad and I were going to meet in New Orleans, and we were going to do the Essence Festival. We had this whole big program planned. So she was doing one screener somewhere, and I was doing another screener in Chicago. And I got an email on my BlackBerry, and it says, Mike reporting Michael Jackson has died. We're on live, and we're going to stay on until we figure it out. And then I got a note from the boss that said, "You're in Chicago. Can you make it to L.A.?" And the last flight was 45 minutes from the time that I got the notice. So I called the airlines, and I said, "I need a ticket for, from the airport in Chicago." I forget which one it was on the south side, from O'Hare. And it was 45 minutes away. And the airport was about 30 minutes away in traffic. And so I had just gotten to the screener, and I jumped back into the car, and I said, "You've got to get me to the airport." And I ran through the airport, and I got on the plane, and they literally, Janice, closed the door behind me.
Oh my
They were like, "Wow, you just made it." And I emailed the boss, and I said, "I'm on the plane," and he said, "Go get him." And then that was it. And that was, it seemed like I thought I was there for 5 days, and I was there for almost 3 weeks. And so, and then it was just and no sleep in 3 weeks. It was like I almost lost my mind. It was almost, honestly, I have to say, it was one of the oddest things I ever covered in a way, because there was so much attention, and it was almost like covering some sort of natural disaster or some sort of disaster, that we have in the country that we do 24-hour coverage for, because it was nonstop for 2 weeks.
Janice, and this is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to Michael Jackson Remembered 2010. I'm speaking with Janice Malone from Nashville, Tennessee, host of Film Festival Radio. Janice, how did you happen to be talking to Don, and was it specifically to talk about this special?
Yes, actually, what had happened is that I kind of established a relationship with CNN by way of some previous interviews that I had done with Soledad O'Brien for some of the specials that she's done. So it was last Friday. Today was a week ago. They emailed me and says, "Hey, would you like to talk with Don about this special that we're going to air next week of remembering Michael Jackson?" And I said, "Are you kidding?" Yes. So that's how it all came about.
It's interesting because, we think of news anchors as being somewhat dispassionate about the things they cover, but clearly I think anyone listening to Lemon, and he even sang a line from one of Michael's songs there, he clearly feels strongly about this. This is something he has a deep personal interest in.
He does, and I could tell when he was covering the whole incident, the whole everything of when it all first happened. In subsequent interviews, I could look at how he was covering it and tell that he was doing, and I mentioned it to him during the interview, and I commended him. I said, "Don, you could clearly see that you were a professional as a journalist, but you were also, obviously, like so many people, a fan." And you're right, he was very passionate about his coverage for it. And I commend him again for it. Really did. He was a lot of fun, as you could tell. Later on in the conversation, we had a lot of fun about his, the Michael Jackson dance and all that kind of great stuff.
Well, let's.
I had a glove. I'm sorry,
you had a glove too.
I had a glove. A glove.
Oh man, the things we learn about our hosts. Let's play another clip. This is Don talking about the power and fame and of a Michael Jackson or someone in that position, and what that means to the people around them, and how sometimes they get away with things that maybe the rest of us might not.
When we sat down and talked about doing it, because throughout the year we had been in contact with people from the Jackson family, people who had worked with Michael Jackson, and the dancers, the choreographers, the business people, or what have you. And I think the reason we really did it was, number one, for the fans, because the fans felt cheated out of the last days, especially hours of his life. And number two, we did it to clear up, as you said, the rumor and the innuendo and everything that has sort of transpired over the past year. And so we sat down with people who were close to him, people who knew him best, and who would know you better than the people you work with every single day, the people you live with, and the people you grew up with. And those are the people we reached out to get answers. Where was he on the last couple of days of his life? What was he doing? What happened on that ride back from the Staples Center on the 24th? On the 25th, what happened between that time and the time when he was no longer breathing, and the ambulances and the 911 calls? And the things that we found out were just amazing. Many people around him said he had never looked better. He hadn't looked better in years. He was ready for his comeback. He was, on stage. He had a glow about him that last night of his life, the last rehearsal at the Staples Center, which was on camera, and that they hadn't, one of his choreographers said he was making the dancers who were half his age look bad. And then there were other people who said, Michael didn't want to do these shows. He was upset with the promoter. He didn't think that he was healthy enough, and he wasn't ready. So we wanted to clear that up. And in this documentary, if you watch, we do clear it up, and we do get some answers. There's still some question about exactly, what happened, especially at the house, because that's all being debated in court now. Dr. Conrad Murray's in court. But from the emails, from the 911 calls, from the testimony, from the briefings that have been filed in court, we get to learn a lot more 1 year later than we knew the months after, the weeks after he died.
What, and you, as we all know, you've been working on this for a year now. What were some things, or can you at liberty to say, that surprised you the most as you were doing your research?
Well, what surprised me the most is that I think, people have this sort of idea about what Michael Jackson was like, whether you liked him or you didn't like him. There are some people who said, oh, well, he's a monster and he was this, and then there were others, he was the sweetest person in the world. I think what I learned the most, and was a bit surprising, is that when you have that level, that degree of fame and wealth, that you can basically keep anything sort of hidden. You can be isolated. You can hire doctors, and you can get prescriptions and medications and treatments that the average person can't afford to get. When you're Michael Jackson and you call, or someone from your entourage or your person calls and says, hey, Michael Jackson is on the phone, or what have you, or Michael Jackson needs a prescription, or Michael Jackson needs you to see him, you do it. You jump. Because most people want to be associated with someone who is a living legend. So what I learned is that you can basically, in the medical system, you can get people to pretty much do what you want them to do because of who you are and because of your ability and power to do it, your influence.
That's very true. It's amazing. It's like that old saying goes, money talks. It really does. Money can talk to almost anyone. But
also wealth and fame, I would say in some ways fame carries and more influence sometimes than money. I mean, money is a powerful drug, as they say. Money is very powerful, but influence and fame are very powerful as well.
And they are.
Janice, you've interviewed other people over the years, people who actually traveled with Michael before Thriller, right? You have some experience with that?
Yes. I talked to one of the young ladies, and as I said, I won't reveal her name, who has a child with one of his brothers, and she and I, this was back maybe 10, 12 years ago, she and I became friends long after the interview was over, and she was going through, at that time, a really rough time financially, trying to get on her feet, and she was having some issues with trying to get support and what have you. And she told me that Michael provided health insurance for the child, and he was very concerned to make sure that those type of needs were met. And she said that Michael was the type that he did not like to interfere or have any kind of say-so with any of his siblings' personal lives and what they did or didn't do. But he did do that for her and the child because he was very, very concerned for their well-being. And she said that she just thought that that was just, she was worried about that because I think the child had some type of illness. It was a minor illness that could have gotten major. But anyway, he came in, and she said he just kind of quietly did that for them. And, it just, again, it is a testament to many of the things that people said, how kind he was, just kind of in a quiet way towards so many people.
Well, we have one more clip from your interview with Don Lemon, and this is interesting because he talks about Michael's kids. He talks about Catherine Jackson, his mother, and Joe Jackson. I want to play this because then it feeds into the final clip we have from Film Festival Radio with Janice Malone, which is from her conversation with Joe Jackson. So listen to this one more interesting clip from Don Lemon of CNN, who earlier this evening hosted an extended special on Michael Jackson.
So what is have you heard or reported on the status of his mom right now and his children? What are they like? What's going on?
I did. The mom, it's interesting because I was speaking to Randy Taraborelli, who lives just a few blocks away in Encino from the family. And I reached out to the family, and I know several people who are close friends to the family. That said, the thing that you should know, and what's interesting, is that the children are extremely well adjusted. You can see the children out shopping at Target with Catherine Jackson. You can see them going to the playground and the ball fields there. They go to karate. They go to dance lessons. And considering who their father was and who their, aunts and uncles are, you would say, oh, my gosh, these kids would be cloistered. They're, always in the house. They can't go outside. These kids go outside. They're normal kids, probably a lot more normal than a lot of people you see out in the Hollywood area. And for me, that makes me feel good because, you go, wow, no matter who their dad was or whatever the experiences were, you want these kids to have a good life experience and you want them to have a good life. And it appears from, all reports that they're doing well. They're well adjusted and they're going to be okay.
That's good to hear. What about the mom, Catherine Jackson? How is she?
Catherine Jackson is great and an amazing role model, an amazing matriarch. I think because, can you imagine, Janice, having that much pressure? Not only from having Michael Jackson as your son and who died, at 50 years old, but think about Janet as your daughter, the rest of the brothers at Jackson 5, those are your sons. You got to deal with LaToya, and all the crazy things.
Be a loose end.
And you have to deal with the estate, which is millions upon millions of dollars, and what happens, your son's legacy, and what have you. And Joe Jackson, she is doing great. And for someone who's in her 80s, I don't know where she gets the strength from. I would imagine that it's from faith, or she has a deep sense of spirit or faith or what have you. But she's doing extremely well, and I wish her the best. My heart goes out to her, and I have to say my congratulations as well for handling this as well as she really kept the family together, in those days, those days during his death and then following his death. I think she did an amazing job because you would imagine people were pulling her from left to right. No, do this, and I think she sort of stuck to her center. So she's doing great.
Well, I got a couple of last questions here. What about Joe Jackson? What is his relationship with the rest of the family like nowadays?
I talk to every single family member I've spoken to on camera or off camera, including, Tito and Jermaine, is like, hey, that's my dad. That's my dad. And I say, yeah, and they're like, that's, they realize that's how they feel, I should say, that's how they got to the point that they got to. That's how they got the success and the wealth and the fame, is because their dad pushed them. Now, it's a catch-22 because sometimes they didn't want to be pushed that way as children, and they feel like, their youth, they didn't have a normal childhood. But do you know any other family that's as famous as the Jackson family? You can probably name them on one hand, count them on one hand if you could name them off, the Osmonds and then on and on. But it's because of their father. And that last interview that we did with Joe Jackson, or the first interview that anyone ever did after his death, drew a lot of controversy. And, I'm not going to say what I thought about it. I just left it up to, hey, maybe this is the guy, he's dealing with the death of his son, and who knows what he'll say. But they say that's his way of grieving. That's how their dad is. And their dad has always been that way. And quite frankly, they said he's just an old-school black man. And that's how they deal with things. And he came from a place where African Americans didn't have much, and he wanted us to have everything that we could, and that's how he pushed us, and that's all he knows. He's not perfect, but we still love him.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to interview him earlier this month, and it was interesting. It was funny in some places, and it was professional in other places, and all around it was just interesting. I have an uncle that kind of reminds me of Joe Jackson in a lot of ways, real old school, kind of dresses like him.
Yeah, they have one speed, and that's just like, and especially, Jet, when you get to be a certain age, no matter who you are, you feel like you can say whatever. You don't care anymore.
Yes.
And you don't care what people think, and so you'll just say whatever. And I think he's reached that point. And being who he is, it just sort of, it just sort of exacerbates the situation. You're like, oh, Joe, wow.
Wow. Speaking of wow, this is Bob Andelman, and you are listening to a special Mr. Media radio show remembering Michael Jackson, 2010, on the first anniversary of his death. And I'm speaking with Janice Malone, the host of Film Festival Radio. Now, we played that clip where Don Lemon, an independent person, commented interestingly on Joe Jackson, Michael's father. And now we have one more clip with Janice before we move on. This is from her interview with Joe Jackson, Michael's father. Anything you want to tell us to set this up, where he was, what was going on?
Well, what was going on is that I believe he was in Indiana, I understand, and he was obviously either at a restaurant or a diner or somewhere ordering breakfast, and supposedly doing an interview with me. And I when I listened to this, I said, wow, I guess we can kind of see where LaToya gets her kind of loose cannon speech from. It's kind of like her dad, just let it fly. So Joe, let it go.
He did. And Janice, I'm going to play the clip. I want to thank you for joining us on the show tonight, and remind everybody before we go to Joe Jackson that they can catch your show, Film Festival Radio, on Blog Talk Radio. And the pleasure of speaking with you tonight. Thanks for your contribution.
Well, thank you, Mr. Media. It's been a pleasure to be a part of your show, and I really love your show. So thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Okay, folks, this is Joe Jackson with Janice Malone of Film Festival Radio. Enjoy.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, wonderful. It's such an honor to have you on our show this morning. I know you're a very busy man, so we'll get right to our questions here.
Go ahead.
Of course, we're in the midst of, how television talent shows are so popular, such as American Idol and others like that. I was wondering, what do you feel about these big television talent shows? Because your family did it back in the old-fashioned way.
What television show you're talking about?
We're specifically talking about American Idol and shows like that. What do you think about those kind of shows?
Yeah, you mean when I get the national tendency?
No, I was talking about the television show, American Idol. Have you watched that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what do you want to know about it?
I would just like to know, what is your opinion? What do you think about those type of shows?
Well, they're good if they're done well, you know. And the ones that's American Idol, if it, you know, anything is good if it makes money. You know, that's what I think. It's all about the money, really. And the person that's doing the interview, if they're telling the truth, and that's what the interviewer wants to hear, then and the money's right, it's a great deal.
Okay. Well, speaking of talent, I understand that you have you're managing or you're working with a new music group. Tell us about.
Yeah, he's a hip hop artist. His name is Nicolio. I just finished all this stuff, and we're gonna be Listen to see now, and what it is. I see her working with Crystal. This is the girl that she did a movie called Destination Fame.
Okay.
But it hasn't been released yet, and so we're looking forward to that getting released. Basically, that's it. You know, I'm not going to go out here and be trying to get manage a lot of artists. I just want enough just to keep me focused. And things of that sort. All right. Yeah.
I was wondering, what is your impression of today's music scene? What do you think about how? Because I talk to a lot of artists and they're not very happy with how the radio music scene is versus. What do you think about it?
Yeah, when I think about it.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah. Your question was. Your question was, well.
What do you
what was
think
your question
about today's, what do you think about today's music scene?
Well, they're still putting out good music because a lot of people buy music. It's because it's their artists that they like performing the best, and so that's what makes the artists to make money. And when you have lots of fans that depend on the music. Now, I think the CDs and things of that sort is like going down because of the new thing, new technology is coming in every day, and they're happening new things, you know. And it's better because the internet and all those things, and you're releasing something, it goes all over the world. So I think it's nice.
Yeah, instantly. It definitely does. Well, as we all know, so many of your kids have so many hit records. I was wondering, what are some of the songs of some of your kids? What are some of your personal favorite songs from your children?
I like the Earth song. I like Thriller, you know. And there's songs about the animals, you know, saving the animals and about them destroying the rainforest and all that stuff, you know. That's their song. And also, Thriller is a good song for one of the national holidays we have is the Halloween thing, you know. And it's good to have that going on a Halloween night, the Thriller. So that was a big hit. So it's all right. It makes people happy, make them enjoy themselves, let them enjoy themselves.
Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite songs from Janet?
Beg your pardon?
What are some of your personal favorite songs from Janet Jackson's career?
Everything Janet's song I recorded and performed is good. And any song that when you record it, it makes money. See, Janet has a lot of fans, almost just as many fans as Michael had. And those fans are always looking for something good coming from their artists that they represent. But at the same time, they love their artists and the artists try to patronize to the fans to keep them happy.
Definitely so. Do you think that it's easier for singers to get into the music business today rather than when you got your family into the music business? Is it easier now?
No, it's a little harder now. Yeah. Let me have one pancake, 2 eggs.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
And sugar-free syrup. And two slices of bacon. That's it. I'm ordering my food and talking to you on the radio, all this stuff.
Yeah, it's making me want to go get some breakfast. I'll take that.
I just want to say to all the fans, and I got to get off here because I got to be taken out to do what I got to do today. They're waiting on me. But I want to say to all the people there, who is in Nashville?
Yes.
And tell them that thanks for patronizing the Jacksons and myself, and looking forward to coming down there. I think it's around the 4th or somewhere in there. And then I think it's the Ladies or Women's Expo or something.
Yes,
I'll be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you much.
We're going to let you enjoy your breakfast then. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, I don't know what to say after that, but so let's take a quick break. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a special Mr. Media radio show remembering Michael Jackson on the first anniversary of his death. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a special Mr. Media radio show remembering Michael Jackson 2010 on the first anniversary of his death. Tony Peters joins us now from Dayton, Ohio. He is host of the weekly BTR program Icon Fetch, where the legends of music are found, and is a 20-year veteran of broadcast radio, is a music historian, and an avid record collector. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bob, it's good to be here.
Glad to have you. You've got some very interesting contributions for folks. Tell us a little bit about your interview with Tommy James of Tommy James and the Shondells.
Well, the show that I do, Icon Fetch on Blog Talk Radio, I've been centering on a lot of the artists from the past that have new projects that they're working on. And I interviewed Tommy James a few months ago about a book that he has out called Me, the Mob, and the Music. And it is just a crazy book, the fact that his record company was run by a mobster. So anyway, I'd made the connection with Tommy, and so when we were putting together the Michael Jackson show, I reached out to him to see if he had some any kind of memories of Michael Jackson. And actually, with Tommy, the perspective that he took was, since Tommy James was the producer on a lot of his records, he kind of took that sort of objective point of view when talking about Michael Jackson. So let's roll that.
All right. Sorry.
That's all right. It's live radio.
It is. Okay, here we go.
Michael was quite literally, a singularity unto himself. He completely changed the music business in one fell swoop. I don't think anybody, maybe besides the Beatles, ever did that before. When you think of Michael's Thriller album, even more so than the Off the Wall album that came before it, although that really was sort of step one. But the final step was the Thriller album, and that album single-handedly changed the industry. When you think of what music was like on the left side of that, and you think of what music was like on the right side of it after the album came out, it really changed things. Before the Thriller album, in the early 80s, you had, Loverboy and Rick Springfield.
Right, exactly.
And the kind of acts that were happening just before Michael, and then after him, with the beginning of the boy bands and the stark dancing act, the sort of review type R&B, a very new kind of R&B came after Michael. And so I must say I was looking at it from a historical standpoint, Mike really changed things, and he was one of my favorite artists of all times. I must say, I was a huge fan, and I was so very sorry that Michael passed. I took it it was a very personal thing with me.
So that was Tommy James there of the Shondells had a chance to talk with him. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about was that the amazing thing about Michael Jackson was that he had that success so quickly. I don't think a lot of people realize that the singles that he did with the Jackson 5, they set a record for the most number ones in a row to start off with. The first 4 Jackson 5 singles all went to number 1. So you talk about sort of starting at the top and the pressure to sort of stay at the top. I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There were all songs. They all went to number 1. And so Michael Jackson really didn't have a chance to sort of, kind of enjoy success on the way up. It was like boom, and it was right there. And about the only other artist I can think of that started out as a child and then continued on was maybe Stevie Wonder, but Stevie Wonder didn't have that he didn't have that fame right away that Michael Jackson did. And so that's one of the crazy things about his success is that it happened so quickly. And he was a member of a group, the Jackson 5, yet the youngest member got all the focus. I mean, whenever you see the old clips on Dick Clark or any of these interview shows with the Jackson 5, who do they want to talk to? They want to talk to Michael Jackson. So, that's one of the... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, for people who, may only have a short frame of reference, we played the Tommy James clip because Tommy James was basically a contemporary of Michael Jackson.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, we lose track of that now because Tommy's sound, Tommy James and the Shondells, which I love their music, but it was of a period, and then it kind of stopped, whereas Michael continued to grow and change over those years. And we have another clip from Tony Peters' interview with Tommy James. I believe this one is Tommy talking about the timeless quality of Thriller.
Yes.
All right, let's give a listen to that. And
it certainly does. As a matter of fact, when you look at the work, and of course Quincy Jones had a lot to do with that.
Sure, absolutely.
When you look at the track work, for example, with those early synthesizers, it stands up as hip as anything today. And truthfully, we're talking about 1982. We're talking about almost 30 years ago.
Right.
And then of course Michael's vocals were unbelievable. Michael had the ability to blend his voice with his voice, almost like a musical instrument. And his vocals were just incredible. I don't think, they're very hard to duplicate with any other singer. Michael was just an amazing musical person. I mean, it wasn't just the dancing, it was everything he did. I mean, he was into jazz. He wrote some just amazing music, and when you look at his body of work and you look at the songs he wrote and the music he was responsible for his whole life, it's astonishing.
Indeed, there's another clip from Tommy James there in talking with him, and he brings up a really good point, that the fact that how many childhood entertainers, entertainers that are children, actually get to be adult entertainers that are taken seriously. I thought of somebody like Donny Osmond. It's like, okay, when I was a kid watching Donny Osmond, then he tried to be taken seriously, and what? Nobody took him seriously. And Michael Jackson was one of those rare entertainers where he actually got better as an adult, and certainly, Thriller was phenomenal, and he put out even better music than that. So that was certainly an amazing thing. So. The other thing, I actually had another person that I talked to for the interview, and I talked to a fellow by the name of Dennis Coffey, and he was a guitar player with the Funk Brothers, which was all the session guys that played behind all the Motown hits he joined the Funk Brothers and in about 1969 or so, and started playing on Temptation Records. He was the first guy to bring in the wah-wah sound, so he played on like Ball of Confusion and I Wish It Would Rain, and some of these great Temptate Cloud 9. I think he's on that one too. So anyway, I've got a little segment from him about talking about when the Jackson 5 first entered the studio. They actually entered the studio in Detroit, and that's where Dennis Coffey was. So can we play that one?
Actually, let's talk for another minute. I had a little technical issue here.
Oh, fair enough. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just realized it as you were discussing that.
That's all right.
Tony, we had also discussed ahead talking about Michael's influence on dance and commercial endorsements and MTV. Maybe you want to take a minute and tell folks a little bit about that.
Well, the thing that's amazing about Michael Jackson is that not only was he incredibly influential as a singer, songwriter, the great music that he did, but you can't name another performer that not only was incredibly influential that way, but then think about, the jacket that he had with all the zippers on it and the plastic pants and the whole deal. Like he influenced fashion. Suddenly, he's out on MTV, and then you have, everybody wanting to dress like him, and then the dancing. And I don't think you can name another performer, with the moonwalk. I mean, I remember watching that on the MTV. I thought it was the MTV Video Music Awards or something like that, or maybe it was the Motown special where he first did it. But your jaw dropped with the first time he did the moonwalk, and you were just you were blown away. And then, of course, everybody's trying to copy that. And again, that you think of that as well. So Michael Jackson is the type of person that he was such the complete package of the entertainer, because it wasn't just the music, and it wasn't just the dance, and it wasn't just, the fashion. He did all of those things, and all of that sort of still lives on today. And then you mentioned the commercial endorsements. As far as I can remember, he was the first major performer to sign an endorsement. If you remember, it was the Pepsi ad that he did, and I remember thinking that was so odd. Like, wow, here is a guy that's actually an entertainer, and he's doing endorsements. And then it seemed like that opened the floodgates. You remember it seemed like just a few months later you had Eric Clapton pushing Michelob beer, and it seemed like okay, but it's almost like Michael Jackson stuck his foot in the water and said, hey, guess what? It's okay. I can do it. Everybody else can do it. And of course, we think of the Pepsi commercial Gone Awry where his hair catches on fire or whatever, So, but anyway, that's the amazing thing about Michael Jackson, is that he was so multifaceted, and he touched so many different parts of pop culture, and I think that's why, here a year later, we're still talking about the major impact that he had on music and on pop culture in general. So.
Now I'm going to challenge you on something. You said that him and Pepsi was the first. I don't know why, but I thought that the Rolling Stones and Jovan were.
It may have been, but still, it was like, to me, with Pepsi, that was such a middle of the road kind of sponsor. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, everybody drinks Pepsi. And it was like I just kind of that seemed to be such a major. And I don't remember anybody ever doing endorsements with Pepsi or Coke or anything like that, or any kind of beer sponsor before that. But then he seemed to certainly, and if he wasn't the first, he certainly was one of the first to do that kind of thing. So, and another thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, please, Tony. After you.
The other thing you could obviously mention is the Thriller video was such an incredibly influential part of MTV that I think that pretty much legitimized the music video format, because suddenly you had Vincent Price, and it was this big lead up to the actual song. It was what was it, like 9 minutes, or maybe it was more than that, I can't remember, but it was a little movie, and I remember MTV running that into the ground when it first came out. But it was such a big deal because it was taking the music video into a completely different area. This wasn't just somebody standing there with a guitar in their hands miming the song, this was something that took a great deal of effort to put together and really was a mini movie. And again, Michael was the first to do something like that. So.
Well, Tony, thank you. We've got the clip straightened out. So this is let's just come back for a second.
Okay.
This is Dennis Coffey talking about Michael and the Jackson 5 in the studio for the very first session. So check this out, folks. This is from Icon Fetch, the show Tony Peters does on Blog Talk Radio.
So first off, you were a guitar player, and you actually played with the Funk Brothers. You were part of that whole session team that played on just about every Motown record till about the early 70s, right?
Yeah, the first session I did over there was the wah-wah pedal part on Cloud 9 by the Temptations.
Nice.
And then I was there probably every day until I moved out in L.A. in 73, and I was working at Mo West for 3 years doing sessions out there, too.
Okay. So, and did you do primarily Temptation stuff, or was it pretty much everything that was coming through the door?
Everything, because Norman Whitfield had me on Gladys, he had me on a few Marvin things, and then out in L.A. I did the I Want You thing with Marvin, and then I did the Supremes, and yeah, pretty much everybody.
Really? So you were a part of the first session with the Jackson 5 then, huh?
Yeah, and then what I think they did is, I think at some point the story goes that I Want You Back and ABC, they thought the Funk Brothers were a little bit too mature for the young band. I understood they recut that stuff in L.A.
Okay, gotcha. Now, did you get to actually see Michael Jackson in a very young age? Did you see him in the studio then?
Yeah, there was one time where we were working on those first tracks, and the whole family showed up. And God, Michael was a little guy then.
Right.
And his dad was looking at the guitar effects pedals that I was using for the song. And when we went on break, he says, "Man, what are those pedals?" And I said, "Well, they do this. Here's a wah-wah pedal does that." He says, "I'd like to buy some of those effects for the Jackson 5."
So there you go, Dennis Coffey there talking about the early days with the Jackson 5. And again, he mentions the fact that he recorded I Want You Back and ABC, and with the Funk Brothers, and it was a heavier, kind of harder, funkier sound. It's amazing to me that's never seen the light of day. I'd like to hear that stuff because I'm kind of interested. Could be neat.
Absolutely.
So, but anyway, that stuff has disappeared, and not been there. So I do have another clip of Dennis, and I asked him because he did come in contact with Michael again a little bit later, a few years later. He was asked to do a concert with the Jackson 5, so we can roll that one whenever you're ready.
All right.
So then tell me, you actually came in contact with Michael a few years down the road then when they were playing live, is that right?
Yeah, I had a call when I lived in California. I was doing sessions for everybody, just like here. I worked with Motown and everybody else, Wilson Pickett down south, and Dramatics, everybody, at the same time. And I got a call from Ben Barrett, who was the contractor for Motown, out in L.A., and he asked me to do a live show with the Jackson 5. And so I said, "Well, when do we rehearse?" And they said, "Well, the rehearsal was today, and the guitar player just left."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he said, "This is not about a guitar player. This is about you, because Motown specifically requested you." And so I said, "Wow, it doesn't sound like a good time for me." But I said, okay. And I at that point, I said, if I can bring my in-laws to the show, So he said, all right, because they were in town visiting us. So I brought them to the show, and this time Janet Jackson was the little one.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Janet was born by that point. Okay.
Yeah, so she was out, part of the show. They were doing Benny Goodman Sing, 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 and R&B and all kinds of stuff. It was a pretty dynamic show. And then one of the parts of the show, Janet comes out in this little brass gownish thing and did a solo thing.
Huh. So tell me, did you have any impressions, if you can remember back to there, with Michael Jackson a little more? I would think, like, as the years went by, he grew up a little more. He was starting to take more control of the band, and I mean, he was always kind of the front man anyway, but I think as he got older, he sort of really became the leader. Did you see any of that?
What I saw is a very well choreographed and a well put together show. I mean, and from where I was sitting, I was right next to the drummer.
Right.
And I was watching these charts because I never saw them before, and I had to get through this thing without So my observations of the group per se, because it was the first time I had seen the charts, that I was pretty busy.
Right. So there you go. That's Dennis Coffey talking to him about playing with the Jackson 5, and pretty interesting stuff. In fact, he's got a book out called Guitars, Bars, and Motown Superstars, and that's currently in the mail to me. I hope to be able to read that and hopefully have Dennis Coffey on my Icon Fetch show here in the not-so-distant future, because a guy like that played with the Temptations and Marvin Gaye and Gladys Knight and Jackson 5 and all that sounds pretty interesting. So, absolutely.
Well, Tony, excellent work with these guys. I hope we've, as with Janice Malone earlier, I hope we've introduced a whole group of new listeners for your show. Again, it's Icon Fetch. You can find it on BlogTalkRadio.com. Just search for by name, Icon Fetch, or search Tony Peters. And Tony's calling into us tonight from Dayton, Ohio. Tony, thank you so much for being part of the show tonight.
Hey, no problem, Bob. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, my friend.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a quick break. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a very special Mr. Media's radio show, remembering Michael Jackson 2010 on the first anniversary of his death. And we will be right back. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a very special Mr. Media radio show, remembering Michael Jackson 2010 on the first anniversary of the singer's death. And joining us now from Dayton, Ohio is D.A. Williams, host of WDKK Radio, which airs Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Blog Talk Radio. Williams is also the owner of Full Circle Media Group. He is the youngest son of pioneer on-air radio personality, Kay Williams Sr., who was instrumental in the careers of artists such as Solomon Burke, B.B. King, and many others. D.A., welcome to Mr. Media tonight.
Well, Bob, thank you for having me, and it really is an honor and a treat to be involved in this remembrance of the great Michael Jackson. I'm just glad to be here.
Well, tell us, I know you have some thoughts about Michael's general contributions to American music. What strikes you this evening?
Well, I think from listening to all of the former guests, it's pretty difficult to add anything to that because everybody was really nailing it. But one of the things that I was thinking about, growing up in the music industry, being around so many different artists from different periods of time, one of the things that I think is so striking, first of all, about the Jackson 5 is thinking about during the 60s, really what was really going on in America. That was pretty much a time of some intense racial situations. And for number one, the Jackson 5 to be able to accomplish what they did in and of itself is phenomenal. And then Michael just really took it to another level. And I really do believe that he was very instrumental in helping to resolve many of the racial tensions that exist, in our nation. I always view music as the universal language. It crosses all boundaries, economically, socially, financially. And Michael really exemplified the very best of humanity. I really sincerely believe that.
Do you think that people put too much, while he was alive, certainly, pressure and expectation on him in that regard? And I think that's something that's happened in the last 2 years with Barack Obama too. It's to be that first person, that person who's breaking through the glass ceiling, so to speak. That's a lot for an individual.
Yeah, it is, and unfortunately, and I hate to to kind of put it this way, but it is what it is, and so I don't think it's so much people putting a lot on an individual who's in that position. It just kind of comes with the territory. I don't think that was first and foremost in Michael's mind, not at all. I believe he was aware of it, and I think that added to his perfectionism because I think he knew that all eyes were upon him. It's not something he chose to do. He was born into it, and he did a very, very good job in exemplifying, not just for African Americans, so I don't want you to think I'm speaking in that vein, but across the board, what an individual can do when they're focused, when they allow their creativity to be expressed, and Michael, he really did. He exemplified all of that.
Now, you did 2 interviews that we're going to play clips from, 2 each for the show. Tell us a little bit about the first fellow you spoke to, Weldon McDougall III.
Okay, Weldon Arthur McDougall III traveled extensively with the Jackson 5. He worked promotions in A&R for Motown Records. And so he traveled, as I said, extensively. When I walked into his place to do the interview again, because I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, there were just all kinds of pictures out there that he had taken on the road. And so, Weldon had a very close relationship with the Jacksons as well as Michael. And, so I just kind of grabbed him and said, can you give us some thoughts for this presentation that we're doing on Blog Talk Radio? And he very graciously shared with us.
All right. Well, let's give a listen. This is D.A. Williams. This is the first clip we have from his interview with Weldon McDougall, former Motown A&R exec, talking about Michael Jackson.
This is D.A., and I'm sitting here talking with Weldon Arthur McDougall III, who was very instrumental in introducing Michael Jackson to Motown. And we are looking back at this one-year anniversary of Michael's passing.
Hi, D.A. Nice to be on your show, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry to have to. We got a conversation about Michael Jackson a year after he passed, but I really wanted to say I'm the guy who actually introduced Michael Jackson, or the Jackson 5, I should say, to Motown.
Right.
They were in Chicago doing a talent show, and whoever won the talent show would play with the star of that week's show at that club.
Okay.
And it just so happened to be Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, who did a song called Does Your Mother Know About Me?
Okay.
So anyway, Joe Jackson on that Wednesday said that he would love to be with Motown. And I told him, I said, man, I can't get nobody on the label.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, being a promotion man, I felt like that's as much as I could do, get the records on, let alone putting talent on,
Right.
So what I did, I said, listen, Bobby Taylor, he has a production deal. He might be interested in, dealing with you guys.
Okay.
So I told Bobby Taylor that night that I hadn't met the Jackson 5.
Mm-hmm.
And when he see him Friday, I said, man, they pretty bad. So anyway, he saw him Friday, and he liked them and signed them up.
Wow.
The rest is history.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, because we're looking back, and what do you think Michael's main contribution to American music actually is? If you were to pinpoint one thing, knowing your relationship with him, what do you think he would like to be remembered for?
He would like to be remembered for making people happy.
Okay.
I mean, his actual thing, when people were smiling and jumping and hollering at what he was doing, he was the happiest.
Okay.
So, he was truly the guy that you seen entertaining people and coming up with new ideas how to entertain you. He did it because he loved the people.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed when I walked in, and I know that you have photos and photos and photos of Michael, all the memorabilia. You were their photographer when they were out on the road. And so you really knew Michael. And from your perspective, he just wanted to make people happy.
That's all.
Do you think that the music industry has lost more than just an entertainer?
I think so, yes. Because unless somebody has it in their mind to be the kind of entertainer that Michael was, which I don't see nobody on the horizon like that, you know.
Right.
I think we lost a great artist, a really great artist.
Well, Weldon, man, we want to thank you for that. We know that you know him, and I know at this time, as hard as it is for you to talk about Michael's loss, but we really did appreciate you taking out this time to talk with us on WDKK Radio.
Well, thank you, man.
All right.
All right. Well, D.A., I've got a call for you. We have another clip from Weldon, but first I want to bring Jackie on the line. Jackie, are you there?
Yes. Hi, how are you? I'm Jackie Hernandez here in Virginia. I'm from the Facebook family of love fans of Michael Jackson. How are you doing?
Okay. Good.
Wonderful.
I have a question to ask you. Do you think there was a death conspiracy with Michael's death?
Do I think there was a conspiracy?
Yeah.
Well, I know that there are a lot of theories going around, and truthfully, I don't know if there was a conspiracy. The only thing that I can say is that, well, I think the clip that we just played kind of really sums it up, or sums up at least my position, and that would be whether there was a conspiracy or not. I think the thing that we should remember and the thing that we should keep in mind, especially as fans, is what would Michael say to us at this point as we're looking back? And I think it would ultimately be, we are the world. Let's focus on the positive, and let's not speculate around things that may or may not ever be, recognized. And that's just my personal opinion. So I hope that that may not answer your question, but that's how I would respond to that.
Okay, I was a little disappointed in that. But also, let me ask you something else. Why do you think that the California courthouse has that Dr. Murray is arrested and he should be in jail, but actually it's showing that he is locked up, but he's walking free?
Why do I think that is the case?
No, it's actually the case. It's showing that he's supposed to be locked up right now, and he's actually a free man.
Ma'am, I mean, and I do apologize, but I can't answer that question. I'm not an attorney. I'm not in California. I don't know all of the situations surrounding the trial. I do understand that there is a trial going on. The thing that I am trying to do in the midst of everything with Michael's loss is to draw out from what Michael's life speaks to me and to share that with people.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. You have a great evening.
Thanks for calling, Jackie. Well, let's come back and get to the second clip from Weldon. Do you want to set this one up at all?
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to remember what the clip is. So if you could go ahead and play it, because I know I had quite a few clips of Weldon, and then I can come back and comment on it. How about that?
All right, folks. Again, this is Weldon McDougall, taken from WDKK Radio with D.A. Williams out of Dayton, Ohio.
Be able to answer, because it's a second-party question. And this is based off of the fact of all of the recognition and the tributes and everything that's going on in behalf and in respect to Michael Jackson. From your personal experiences with Michael and you knowing Michael growing up, how do you think Michael would want to be remembered?
I think he would want to be remembered from his performances. When he did Motown 25 and he did the moonwalk,
right?
He was a guy. I mean, in his soul, he wanted to prove to everybody that he could do it better than anybody.
Okay.
Because he had so many doubting Thomases. See, at Motown, they didn't want him to write his own personal song. They didn't think he was, capable. We had great writers at Motown.
Right.
So it would feel like, hey, Michael, I know you want to, but you ain't up to it. You know what I mean? Let us write the song. He proved that point. That was what he was doing. He was proving a point to people who would say that he couldn't do it.
Okay.
And he proved that point. That's what I'm trying to come from.
Right. So he would want to be remembered as the artist he knew that he was.
Right.
All right. And that's about what I figured, because that's all I ever really picked up from Michael. It wasn't so much the fame, the fortune, the recognition. He just wanted people to understand who he was and what he had on the inside of him, because that's how I'm going to remember. And listeners, I hope that as you reflect back on Michael and as you think about the influence that he has been in your life, that you just don't let it be a passing fancy, but you know that this is an individual who knew his own potential and refused to allow anything or anybody to hinder them. So if you want to have a legacy, if you want to give a tribute to Michael, if you want
DA?
Yes.
Was that the end of the clip? It ended rather suddenly.
No, it shouldn't. I was wondering what happened myself.
I don't know. Well, I apologize. It just stopped.
No, that's fine. I was probably recapping what I shared with the young lady about remembering Michael for what he would have been remembered for. And that was actually a clip from a show that I did when Michael first passed. I reached out to Weldon and had Weldon on my show, and we were talking about some things surrounding Michael Jackson's passing. So that's what that clip was.
Okay. Well, let's move on to your other interview. This is really interesting. This is G.C. Cameron, who was formerly with the Temptations. Tell us a little bit about Mr. Cameron and set up the first of these two clips, if you would.
Okay, yeah, G.C. Cameron, he I think the last group he was with the Temptations, but he was also with the Spinners. He wrote a number of songs for Motown, was with Motown quite a while, and he was actually one of Michael's mentors when the Jackson 5 first went to Motown Records. He played a very integral part in the artist development side of Michael, which is what Motown was really infamous for. They really were developing their artists, and so I reached out to GC as well and asked GC would he, just share some reflections on the passing of Michael Jackson. So that's GC Cameron.
All right, here we go.
All right, man, it was my pleasure, my honor. God bless you. And, like I said, Michael was simply the best. He was the best kid, his family. I love them all, his mom, Catherine, his daddy, Joe. No matter what the media say, they say that about Jesus, too.
Right.
But as a human being, I'm into human beings, not the personalities.
Right.
And
exactly.
Michael was the greatest human being, one of the greatest human beings I've ever known. One last thing before I go, I used to tell him, he and I had this little thing where he'd come to the studio, and he had his Uncle Joe who would drive him back and forth in this little van. He had a little Ford minivan kind of thing. And he had that, and he would come to the studio, and I'd see him coming if I was at the studio. The first thing I'd tell him, I'd just walk up to the window and say, Michael, give me some money. And he'd laugh like crazy because I knew he was very wealthy. I knew he was going to be a rich kid. It was like a joke. I said, man, you're going to be rich, rich, rich. Give me some money. And he'd crack up. We did this for the longest, and his brother Jackie and I went to school together. We went to musical school together.
Okay.
School of music, yeah. But he was just the greatest, man. And the world is darker because of his absence. His light darkened a great part of our society, really.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah, that's go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say what you were going to say, that was G.C. Cameron, formerly of the Temptations.
Yeah.
And we have another clip of him. What does he talk about in this clip?
GC is talking about the contribution to the total arts that Michael did, involving what he did with dance, how he incorporated dance into his sets, because again, at that time, we did have a couple of entertainers who did the same thing. We had, James Brown, Jackie Wilson, individuals who really did influence Michael, but Michael took it and, just took it to a whole nother level. And so GC is reflecting on that.
All right, let's listen to the second clip. This is G.C. Cameron talking to D.A. Williams of WDKK Radio, right here on Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, I knew him from when he was 7. I knew him when he was at the top of his game, and I knew what he was doing, basically, the contribution that he made to the industry,
right,
and to the people, and to this whole synchronization of dancing. He really organized synchronized dancing in the country and in the world. Everybody does his works now, because it's sort of like the choir, the first choir that was invented there. You know, he kind of made everybody move the same way. That calls for discipline. You don't just do those movements literally. You're just a maniac trying to without some kind of discipline or organization. And what he did was he put a whole bunch of people together and made them think as one, made them think as he thought, movement-wise.
Wow.
So that's his ending. And his greatest contribution is organizing people to synchronize themselves and become one, you know, through the dancing. But his greatness, his first record, I Want You Back, I remember the record, you know, just like it was yesterday, when, of course, I was with the Spinners then, and we were on our way to New Jersey to do a gig riding on the Philadelphia Turnpike. That was the route in and out of the East Coast from Detroit and other places, Ohio, etc. And we were listening, and I heard it on the radio. And I remember telling Billy, I said, hey, that's a hit record there. And he said, yeah, you didn't say that about It's a Shame, or something he said funny after we had cut it, even though It's a Shame wasn't out. But I think that came out in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. 68? It was either 68 or 69.
Okay.
And when the record came out, you know, everybody was shocked because it was a Fonz Mazel, Freddie Perrin, Deke Richards, and Barry Gordy production. They called themselves a corporation. And that was new to everybody, because we were used to Whitfield, Norman, and Barry. We were used to Brian and Eddie Holland and Lamont Dozier and Ivy Hunter and the regular producers, Stevie, et cetera, you know.
Right.
But then here comes the corporation. Boom. What in the world is a corporation? Then we found out Barry was behind it. And that really got excited around the company. Everybody wanted to get produced by the corporation. It was Deke Richards and Fonz Mazel and Freddie Perrin. You know, Freddie Perrin wrote It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday for me later on.
Okay.
So that was Michael and his brothers Jackson 5's first hit record, I Want You Back.
Right.
You know. Then he came in with that little baby voice thing, and it was like, oh, okay, it's over. There they go, you know.
Right.
And especially the chairman had his hopes behind him, and he put his greatest effort behind him. So you know there was no failure. It was a zero fail organizational group movement for the Jackson 5. There was no way for them to fail physically.
Okay.
You know. And
okay.
Their blessings were strong. But Michael came into the world fearless about music and things that he was supposed to do. He had no fear of the stage or anyone on the stage. He was superior. He carried himself in a superior way. His voice spoke superior. His movement said superiority. Everything about him was confidence, and that's where most of the game is won, in your confidence and not your abilities. But his confidence and abilities combined were superb and flawless. Therefore, it made him fearless on the stage. And when you're that, you're like a samurai fighter, and that's what Michael was. He was a vocal samurai. He could do things with a sword that could slice your jugular, and you wouldn't even know you were bleeding because you were so busy boogieing. You know, and that was his thing, you know, from the beginning and the middle. And like I said, the middle was, you know, his off-the-wall thing. We knew what he did with the Jackson 5 and the bubblegum stuff.
Right.
That was setting up the road in which he would travel. That was his trailblazer. But when he went off the wall and Dr. Hugh, Mr. Quincy Jones got involved, then it was a whole different story. He became the soul singer that he was designed and meant to be.
Okay.
And most people don't know that Michael was a soul singer. When you hear him say, Have you used that soul? That is not just an R&B pop singer.
Right.
Michael Jackson was a soul singer who could sing pop, but then again, soul singers can't sing anything. That's why they're soul singers.
Okay.
So people don't give him the credit of being the soul singer that he was. He was king of pop, but he was also Prince of Soul. You know, Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson and James Brown were the godfathers and the innovators of soul, and Michael surely was the Prince of Soul, even though he was the king of pop.
Okay.
So if he could do that, and not everyone is a soul singer.
D.A.,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I love talking to the individuals who were there, the individuals who knew Michael. They came up, though they were, different ages. They were in the same company because the thing that they bring, and I experienced this on a lot of my shows because I deal with a lot of legacy artists. They bring the human element into perspective, because we can get caught up in the glitz and the glamour. But the thing that I appreciated about everyone that I've talked to, from Jack Ashford, who was with the Funk Brothers, and Shushay Green, who was with the Supremes, and so many other artists, when I talk to them about Michael, they talk about Michael the person. And then they bring in the perspective of what he accomplished as an entertainer. And that's such an enriching thing for me. I absolutely love it.
Well, and D.A., before we say goodbye to you here, I know it's important to you that we all remember Michael, and is that because you want to keep his music alive, or is it a bigger thing than that?
It's a bigger thing for me. Even the tagline of what I do with WDKK Radio is the legacy continues. As I stated a little earlier, you read it in my bio, I'm from a musical broadcasting family, and I have seen so many artists come and pass away, and they're forgotten. There's so many artists who are out today, they're still performing, but yet it seems as though they're forgotten. And it is part of the purpose and the mission of WDKK Radio to keep the legacies alive. Because if we don't have people around who know the story and can tell the story for what it is, someone else will make up the story, and it may not be the case. So yeah, it's definitely a bigger picture for me.
All right. Well, folks, I've been talking to D.A. Williams. He's the host of WDKK Radio, which airs Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Blog Talk Radio. D.A. is also the owner of Full Circle Media Group, and it comes to us from Dayton, Ohio. Nice work on the interviews. Great talking to you, and I want to encourage people to find your show and listen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Bob, and thanks to the BTR family as well.
Thanks, D.A. Take care of yourself.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. This is Bob Andelman, and you are, of course, listening to a very special Mr. Media Radio show. This is Remembering Michael Jackson, 2010, on the first anniversary of his death. And we'll be right back. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a very special Mr. Media Radio show, Remembering Michael Jackson, 2010, on the first anniversary of his death. Joining us now from Philadelphia is the one, the only Mother Knows, host of the Mother Knows show. Mother, come on in.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm very good. Delighted to have you. You were with us on our show a year ago tonight, and made quite a splash, and I know you have a tremendous following. We're delighted to have you back tonight.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
What are you thinking about a year after Michael Jackson's passing?
It's kind of crazy because you think he's supposed to be here, and it sounds cuckoo by saying that because everyone has to die, but it's just really funny and strange, Just really seems like he's still here.
And you don't feel like he's gone. We certainly still hear his music all the time. People are still talking about him. He's still controversial, even in death.
Yeah. It seems like you get bigger in death than you were alive, but his music, I've been listening to his music all day, and not just today because he passed away. I always play Michael Jackson on the show and listen to his music. It's just, we lost a big one when Michael Jackson passed away.
Did you, have you talked a lot about him on your show in this past year?
Not really, because I still can't believe it, you know what I'm saying? But I keep his music going, because it's still hard for me to, I grew up to Michael Jackson as a little kid, and to think that Michael Jackson is gone, I'm expecting him to see him on Sunday come out at the BET Awards, and when they showed a video of him working on it, This Is It, and he says, this is my last time, this is the last one, and then he just dies. It was really crazy.
Well, there are people who expect that maybe he will show up. There are those people who just can't accept that he is dead.
Well, he ain't showing up. That's one thing. We can laugh a little bit, but let's be realistic. He won't be there.
How do you feel about the people who? I want to put this the right way. There were people who, after he passed, tended to focus on the negative. There were a lot of controversial things about Michael, the issues with the young children, that kind of thing. Were you okay with people discussing that, or do you find that disrespectful?
What I learned from being in this entertainment industry, and we'll just use Gary Coleman and anyone that's at the top of the line or in the entertainment industry that passed away. Once you die, all type of stuff is going to come out. Of course, no one wants to hear it, but this is real life. They find all type of dirt. They bring up all the bad stuff, and it's just the way of life.
So, it's just, you got to accept the good and the bad.
There you go.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons, besides your gigantic personality, that we wanted to have you here today is you did an interview a while back. I think this was actually before Michael passed, with Stephanie Mills, who starred on Broadway in the original production of The Wiz. Got to be a friend of Michael's. Can you tell us a little bit, set up this interview clip a little bit before she talks about Michael?
Well, first of all, my eyes popped out, my sockets, and my mouth dropped because, when you do interviews, and I'm sure you do your research, and I never knew that her and Michael were shinging. So when I found that out, I was like, oh, wait a minute here, and the rest is history.
All right, let's give a listen. This is Mother Knows from the Mother Knows Show out of Philadelphia, talking to Stephanie Mills about Michael Jackson. Listen up.
And I still have a friendship with Michael, Michael Jackson. We don't talk all the time, but when we see each other, we remember the times that we spent together, and that's important.
It's really important, and it's funny that you brought up the Jacksons because this is like a double-edged sword. Is it true Jermaine Jackson is responsible for discovering you?
Yes, that's true. That's really true because Jermaine, I was friends with Hazel Gordy Jackson, his wife at that time. And I didn't have a deal. I was on Broadway doing The Wiz, and we were always talking, and she was like, you should come to Motown, and he was instrumental in getting me signed to Motown.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the big one, which I almost fainted, but I couldn't believe it. You were Michael Jackson's first sister, Stephanie.
I really was. I thought I was going to marry Michael. I was so in love with Michael Jackson. I think every black girl and every white girl in America was in love with the Jackson vibe. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I couldn't believe when I said Stephanie Mills. Now, how did this happen? When did this? I mean, I probably wasn't born yet, but.
This was during the time of when he was doing the Wiz movie and before that. See, I knew Michael before that because he used to come to the show all the time and hang out backstage with me. But Michael was really, really shy, but I was aggressive. Back then I was.
Stephanie.
I was aggressive, so I was determined I was going to be his girlfriend at that time. He didn't know it, but I was.
And listen to this. I got one more for you. You used to do laundry for him.
Oh, yes, I did. I did his laundry. Yes, I sure did. When he had his place on Sutton Place, I would spend the night and I would do his laundry. And
was it all or Tide? Which one?
It was Tide.
Perfect.
It was Tide. I should do a Tide commercial, huh? It was Tide, and I even cooked for him too. Even though I couldn't cook, but I cooked. And you know what? Even as bad as it was, Michael was such a gentleman. He ate it.
You know what? We make so much of a big thing about how he looked and all this other BS, and he is such an icon. And you can tell he is a sweet person.
Icon, and he is a very, very sweet and nice man. He really is.
That really was quite an interview, Mother. Oops. I'm sorry. Mother slipped off the screen. Where are you? Mother, are you there? Oh, gosh. Mother, stick around for a minute. Let me... Oh, man. Mother, there you are.
You got me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You know how the switchboard is. It just decided to flake out for a minute. So, that interview, it's crazy good. I mean, the things that she was talking about, you had no idea some of that was coming, obviously.
No, I had no idea. I was shocked.
When you talk to people, does Michael come up a lot at this point, either in your show or just in general?
Yeah, because Michael Jackson was such a big musical force that he will forever be talked about. You won't never stop talking about Michael Jackson because he raised the bar so high for entertainers. I mean, he was a perfectionist, and no one can dance, no one can move, no one can entertain like him. That it's like we can never stop talking about Michael.
Well, tell folks a little bit about your show while we have you here. What do you cover? Who would be interested in listening to the Mother Knows show?
If you love gossip and you like it real and raw about any celebrity, you're in the right place. And then we play the best R&B music with a little bit of hip-hop, and you never know who's going to come over the Mother Knows show.
Well, give us a hint. Who has been on the show?
Oh, boy, Tina Marie, Stephanie Mills, Genuine, so many people. Everyone from R&B, Anthony Hamilton, you name it, they've been there.
I don't recall getting an invitation. Obviously, you don't know much about my musical background, huh?
Well, do share. I'm all ears.
We'll save it for another time. I don't want to distract from Michael. I don't want to have
Understandable.
Talent.
Understandable.
Well, any other thoughts, Mother, as we start heading down towards the end of the show? Anything that you're thinking about Michael? Anything that's occurred to you this past year that you wanted to share?
Well, as a host of a music show, all I can do is continue to keep his music playing. And like I said, it's not just because he's dead today. We play a whole block of music. Just keep his music going because it's all about the music. And we talked about that last year and even earlier where people had picked him apart on so many other things that people forget about the major thing, music. So if we keep it on the music and we keep the love and the legacy going, that's all it's about.
Very good. Well, Mother Knows of the Mother Knows Show, based out of Philadelphia, regular show, very popular here on Blog Talk Radio. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing the Stephanie Mills clip. That was great.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot for calling.
Okay. No problem, brother.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. This is Bob Andelman, and you are listening to a very special Mr. Media radio show, remembering Michael Jackson on the first anniversary of his passing. And we will be right back. This is Bob Andelman, and you're listening to a very special Mr. Media radio show, remembering Michael Jackson 2010 on the first anniversary of his death. I just want to take this moment to just let you know that if you've enjoyed this show, there are more than 500 celebrity and media newsmaker interviews archived at mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. I'd love you to come by and check it out. And you can also subscribe for free on iTunes. Just search Mr. Media Interviews from the iTunes store and click the free subscribe button. And now we've got another guest joining us now. This is Timothy Hodge, who also has a show here on Blog Talk Radio. Timothy, welcome to Mr. Media.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Where are you calling us from?
I'm in New York.
All right. And tell folks a little bit about the show you do, what it's called, and when it's on, if it's regularly scheduled.
Well, it's usually on between 8 to 12 p.m., Monday through Friday, and I even do weekends sometime. It's entitled The Timothy Hodge Show. It's an entertainment show where I do celebrities, politicians, entertainers all across the globe.
Wow, that's terrific. And we certainly want to encourage people to come and check that out. You're certainly on enough hours where people can catch you at their convenience.
Right.
So, Timothy, you're calling in on the show about Michael Jackson. What are you thinking about Michael at this point?
Oh, I'm still stunned, about the death. It's been a year. It seemed like it went by so fast, but the day that I found out that it happened, I was really, sick. Because I was a very huge fan of Michael Jackson, and I'm really, also sad that I had the opportunity to work with him. I worked with so many people. Me being in the entertainment industry, I worked with so many people, and I didn't have that privilege to work with him, nor any other Jackson at that. And I think about it every day, and I listen to his music all the time, and I try to play his music on my show as much as possible. And I know when you guys did the show last year, I was supposed to be a part of that show, but I was so upset that it happened. I told I couldn't do it.
I think there were a lot of people who were having trouble a year ago tonight finding the words and expressing, the way they felt and the way the whole thing affected them. And of course, part of it is that he was a very young man. I think he was a couple of years older than I am now, and you certainly look at that and you think, oh, I'm not ready to die. How could Michael Jackson die?
Well, I'm not going to get to that too fully, but, there's a lot of things that goes on behind the scenes in the entertainment industry that the general public is not aware of. There's so much pressure and different things that goes on, and it's really sad. So, and if you don't have basically a shoulder to lean on, it's kind of hard, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Timothy, I understand that you mentioned you work in the entertainment industry, and you know a lot of people who we would recognize. How did some of them respond to Michael's passing?
A lot of them were very shocked, and saddened by it, and they wanted to find out what really happened, and who really got to the bottom, get down to the bottom of what really happened, and a lot of them were just shocked, you know what I mean, and because Michael had really opened doors and had helped their careers out in so many ways, and had been working with them, and now that he's no longer here, what do they do now? Or some can't even move on. The fact that he's gone.
And I understand you have a connection to Diana Ross.
I do. I'm very close friends with her daughter, Rhonda Ross.
Huh. And now Diana, she got roughed up a little bit in the press following Michael's death. She didn't go to the big event, and she wasn't very visible, whereas I guess a lot of people thought that she had a closer connection to him. Can you give us some insight as to what was going on there?
Well, I really don't want to, Diana Ross is a beautiful person, so I'm not going to really, but she had her reasons to stay away from out of the public eye, during the time of Michael's passing, and as she was one of those who gave Michael his start, if you remember, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess she was very deeply hurt herself, the entire Ross family. So, she thought it was best that she stay, out of the public eye for a while, So because, had she came out, they would have been following her all over the place, and she would have been able to breathe.
Mm. And what about Whitney Houston's mom, Cissy Houston? You have a connection to her as well, don't you?
I do. I heard Whitney was very upset that it happened. She was very shocked. I didn't have the opportunity to speak with Cissy about the situation, so I don't know how she felt, but I'm pretty sure she was very upset about this as well.
Hmm. Well, what do you think going forward people should remember about Michael? What's important to you?
Well, his legacy, of course, his music. I mean, if you just listen to a Michael, I mean, I'm sure everybody has a favorite Michael song, and his legacy lives on, and think on the good things that Michael has done, the work and his performances, think on that, think on the good things of Michael, and to keep his memory alive, because to me, no one is hurting more than his children as we speak right now. So, I think they should go on that, and just continue to listen to his music and keep his memory alive, and don't let his name go down in vain, don't let it.
All right. Well, Timothy Hodge, host of the Blog Talk Radio show, The Timothy Hodge Show. It's heard here on the network Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., I guess, every week. Timothy, I just want to thank you for calling in and being part of our show this year.
No problem. And no problem. And thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Take care. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, folks, as we're kind of nearing the end of this special program, I have two more things I'd like to play for you. This is an interesting clip. I found this on the Michael Jackson channel on YouTube, which anyone can go to. There's dozens, maybe hundreds of clips, video clips of Michael, a lot of his best known and some not so well known music videos can be found there. And among all that, I found this message from Dolly Parton.
Well, hello, everybody. As you know, Michael Jackson passed away suddenly a few days ago, and with that, we lost a true music legend, and this is a sad time for music lovers everywhere. I knew Michael, and he really was a true musical genius and a fantastic performer and a really sweet, sweet soul. I always thought Michael had the heart of an angel, and I'm sure that he's rejoicing with him now. Of course, we'll all miss him, but I know that he'll live on through his music. And this should remind us all to treat every day as our last and let people in our lives really know how special they are to us. And I'll start by telling you how much I love and appreciate all my fans and how grateful I am for your love and support over the years. So remember to make every day count and enjoy this wonderful journey that we're all on together. God bless you. Bye.
I thought that was very interesting. What I actually thought was more interesting in some ways was that was the only celebrity video that was on the Michael Jackson channel on YouTube. Then there's one more thing I want to play for you before we call it a night here on Mr. Media. This is Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child. This was posted just today on MTV, and this is her talking about when she heard the news that Michael Jackson had died.
I was in New York City when I heard the news about Michael's passing, and I remember being in my room and crying uncontrollably, as I'm sure a lot of people did. Michael is a magician. He made so many of us believe and dream, and he is the most amazing entertainer to me of all time, and we miss him. And I think that's why it was so heartbreaking for so many of us to hear about that news. And I remember me and a friend actually took one of the little carts all over New York, and we sang Michael Jackson songs all night together, just to remember him, and it felt really good.
Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this special Mr. Media radio program, Remembering Michael Jackson 2010, featuring hosts and interviews that primarily originated on the BTR network. And for more original interviews with your favorite musicians, producers, and music journalists, I hope you'll consider surfing over to our main website, mrmedia.com. That's mrmedia.com. And please take advantage of this great offer for Mr. Media radio listeners. You can go to audiblepodcast.com/mrmedia, that's Mr. Media, to get a free audiobook download of your choice when you sign up today. Again, that's audiblepodcast.com/mrmedia for your free audiobook. Subscribe to Mr. Media on iTunes, and you'll never miss a show. Just search Mr. Media Interviews from within iTunes and subscribe for free. You can also listen with a piece of string and a tin can in many locations. And yes, that's a joke. If you've got an idea for a guest, you can email me directly at bob@andelman.com. You can also follow me on Facebook or on Twitter. twitter.com/Andelman, and that's ANDELMAN, or on Facebook, just search Mr. Media Interviews. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a very interesting show. We had some great contributions from some great Blog Talk Radio hosts, Janice Malone, Tony Peters, D.A. Williams, Mother Knows, Timothy Hodge. I hope I got everybody in. I want to thank Philip Recchia for putting this all together tonight, and thank you again for listening. And we'll go out with just a little bit more Michael Jackson. Thanks for listening, everybody. Come back real soon.
To believe her, a bad idea to believe her.